I guess I couldn't keep away for too long. Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. In this podcast, we usually explore and dissect the evolution of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. Now, back in October, we finished our exploration through the evolution of folk horror, and in January 2019, we will begin our journey through the evolution of the zombie movie. But right now, we're in a little gap, but there are a few interesting horror-related items to discuss. Like, for example, one of the best horror properties to have come out in 2018, The Haunting of Hill House. Now, it's been exactly 1 month since the show dropped on Netflix, and on the day it was released, me and Boyd Hilton had a little spoiler-free chat about the first couple of episodes and our thoughts on the series. And since then, I've received quite a lot of tweets and a lot of requests asking us to do a follow-up episode in which we discuss the series as a whole, do a little spoiler special and talk about the ending. So that's what we'll be doing this week. We will purely be talking about The Haunting of Hill House, and we will be discussing spoilers from the start. This is your spoiler warning. We'll be discussing everything across all 10 episodes of The Haunting of Hill House. And so joining me this week to discuss The Haunting of Hill House in all its spoilerific glory, she was with me on the podcast about a year ago discussing Scream and 90s slashers, but you may also know her from the world's biggest movie podcast, Empire. It is the brilliant Helen O'Hara. Helen, welcome back.
Hello, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. Welcome to my small little cupboard here in the annals of the BFI.
This is actually, I mean, just to describe it for the people at home, a very small white room with basically 2 chairs and a TV.
Yes.
But on the bright side, it's white, it's not panelled, it's not dark, There are no scary corners.
Exactly. I know, I keep thinking that. I'm thinking, should I kind of make this more sort of horror, light some candles or something, How have you been? I mean, it's been sort of a year since we last spoke on this podcast. Just in general, I just want to know your thoughts. Like, how do you think 2018 has been for film? People are already talking about their films of the year and film lists and that kind of thing. How do you think it's been in general?
I feel like it's been a generally good year for film. I think Oscar season is shaping up brilliantly. Now, we aren't going to see all of those films until some of them the start of next year, so I don't know where we count them. But
that's always a problem,
but
isn't it?
It really feels like a really rich Oscar year in particular, and that sort of this few months that we're in, because there are just some fantastic films, and it doesn't feel like there are lots of awards grabby films. It feels like they have a reason to exist. And just so many of them that I loved. I mean, if Beale Street Could Talk would be my personal favorite, but things like Stan and Ollie, I just thought that would be a standard biopic, and it blew me away. I just massively fell in love with it.
I haven't caught that one yet. Because again, I was kind of not that drawn by the idea of it. But
on paper, I thought it would be fine. Good. But it made me absolutely bawl.
Okay, great. Have you seen The Favourite yet?
I have seen The Favourite. I love The Favourite.
That's my favourite. Yeah, absolutely loved it.
It's all there in the name. No, that is a phenomenal film. Widows, phenomenal. I thought it was great.
Amazing.
I mean, it's just, I think there's a lot of great films out there, and it doesn't, it just doesn't feel like there's one good film that everybody's talking about and then some other ones. It feels like a really rich time, and then obviously as a big mainstream nut, I like my superhero movies. The fact that we had Black Panther and Infinity War in the same year alone would be enough to be exciting. So
absolutely,
I think it's been good for the big films as well. Sometimes
crazy actually to think that Black Panther was still this year. That feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it?
It feels like we've just lived with it and learned it and taken it into our hearts a long time ago, but here we are.
Definitely. What do you think in terms of the horror genre and the horror cinema we've seen this year? Hereditary, A Quiet Place, movie like that. Have you been a fan of some of those biggies?
Very much so. Those two in particular. Hereditary, I saw in New York in the middle of a bright sunny afternoon and was still shaken for about an hour after I came out. I think that's a phenomenal movie. I even like the ending, which is the one criticism people seem to have of it.
Me too.
I think it's just incredible. I think as breakthrough films go, I think A Quiet Place is stunning. I think John Krasinski came in, he had such a clear idea of what he wanted. I went on set of that actually, which was wonderful for Empire, and I got to see that they literally found that farmhouse. They found that farmhouse. The only thing they had to build was the silo. Everything else was just there.
Great.
It was meant to happen, that film. It was really it was kind of just magic striking. It's beautiful.
It's unbelievable, isn't it, actually? And you get these people, it's the same with Jordan Peele with Get Out as well. These people who don't necessarily, more connected with comedy. Yeah. Same with Danny McBride, I suppose, in Halloween as well. It's this strange thing where actually they managed to really successfully pull off these like brilliant original kind of horror premises. Yeah.
I think it's something to do maybe with timing. I think, there's got to be some link there between the two. And it's the uncanny. The uncanny can be funny or scary depending on which way you twist it. And sometimes it's a very narrow line between the two, which is why horror comedies maybe work so well.
It's so true. And there is some connection with horror and comedy as well, which we talked about on this podcast, about how they're both kind of in some ways considered kind of inferior, especially like we say when it comes to awards and that kind of thing, because maybe they, I don't know, evoke some sort of emotional response in you, and somehow people don't like that, or it's critically more frowned upon or something. But again, they're kind of closely aligned in some ways, I guess.
I agree. I think they're both underrated in terms of difficulty. Yeah. Possibly, maybe also because it's an entry-level genre for a lot of people, because the level of money you need to get into those genres is lower.
True. That's very true. I suppose there's a huge volume of them because they can be quite cheap to make, and therefore you get some stinkers as well.
Well, that is true. But I mean, there was an article published last week, as we're recording this, saying that it had been a bad year for horror. And
I know. Oh my God.
I've never read anything.
It was in Vogue.
It was in Vogue, and I have never read anything less compelling in my life. I look forward to the article in Empire saying that fashion's had a bad year.
Exactly. I love that. I think Fangoria actually tweeted that, which I found really funny. Yeah, that it's been a bad year for fashion. Now, the crucial question I want to ask you about is, where do you stand on including TV shows in your top 10 of the year list, for example? I'm going back to the Twin Peaks debate from last year again here, because for me, and we'll get into this, The Haunting of Hill House would be right up there for me,
Yeah, actually, after I finished episode 10 of this, I tweeted essentially that if I were the kind of person who did that...
So you're not.
I would put it in my top 10, but I am not. I would be very happy to write a... Well, I'll be honest, I don't agree with top 10s in the first place.
No.
I write
they're
one,
all stupid.
They're all stupid. I write one because it's my job to write one and try and boil down my 10 favourite of the year. There's been one year in my memory where I actually genuinely had a top 7, I think, and that was 2016.
Okay.
Hunt for the Wilder People was in with a bullet at number 1, and then everything else fell into place.
Love it.
But generally, I just sit down when Nick asks me, the features editor at Empire. I look at the releases for the year and I cobble something together, and it really is cobbled, and it could be completely different if he'd asked me the day after.
Yeah.
So anyway, that all said, TV and movies, I get that they're getting closer in terms of production values, in terms of the people making them and acting in them. I get that the way we consume them is often becoming closer as well, and the companies that make them are becoming the same companies, and yet they are still distinct things, and therefore I will treat them as such.
Yes, fair enough, absolutely. So let's talk about The Haunting of Hill House then. So I actually read that tweet, and that was why I thought, I would love to sort of hear your thoughts about it, because so by the sounds of it, you're a fan.
I'm a huge fan. Yes. I expected to like it. I did not expect to love it in the way that I loved it.
Yeah.
And I think it just got me in terms of the... Well, I mean, first of all, it's a really successfully scary, creepy show. But it got me in with the characters, and I think that makes everything so much scarier and so much creepier, because you really want these people to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're pretty sure some of them at least are not going to be.
Yeah.
And therefore you're incredibly invested in how they're going to get through this.
Definitely, yeah.
Your mother, she was not crazy. Neither was your sister, neither is your brother, neither are you. It's that house.
So what was your kind of coming to this? How aware were you of the story of The Haunting of Hill House, the book, the other movies, that kind of thing?
I think I read the book when I was going through my first horror phase at the age of about 13.
Yeah.
And it was too young, and it hasn't particularly stuck with me. I'm actually planning to read it again now. I've rebought it, recently.
Yes.
So I'm not that familiar. I know it exists. That's about it. Saw the 98, 99 version when it came out. Didn't like it. I don't think anyone did.
No one did, sadly.
No.
Yeah.
I do have trouble keeping it straight from the House on Haunted Hill, as do so many others.
It's so confusing because I think they were 2 years apart originally as well. There was an original House on Haunted Hill which came out within a couple of years of The Haunting, and then it happened again in sort of 1999, 2000. We got that remake. It's very confusing. It's very confusing.
Very unhelpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've seen them, but I wasn't sitting here going, oh my God, I wish someone would adapt it.
No. What were your thoughts initially at the idea of kind of, I suppose, dragging this into sort of a 10-hour series?
Yeah, I think that's the big danger, isn't it, with horror? People weren't sure that could be done. I mean, I don't know that I've watched anything like this ever.
Yeah, right.
I've watched lots of horror TV, but obviously it's more episodic generally.
I mean, what are your thoughts on horror TV? You know, like American Horror Story, these kind of, the ones that are more serialized, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I haven't watched all of the American Horror Stories because I got a bit
I know they're
tired of
not great.
They're very gothic, and I like gothic, but only so far. The one that springs to mind for me is actually Supernatural, which is not at all similar to this in the way, that's a 22 episode series. We're on series 14, I think.
Is it still going?
It's still going.
That's
it
amazing.
Will never stop.
I know you're a fan, Helen.
I am
obviously.
a fan.
I've heard you discuss it, but I can't believe it's still going.
It's still but sometimes it is incredibly scary. I think what they do very well is mix up the tone. So they'll have the scary episodes, in the same way the X-Files did. They'll have the really, really scary episodes, the arc episodes, which drive an overarching story forward, and then the ridiculous comedy episodes at which they are superb.
Brilliant. I suppose kind of similar to Buffy as well, isn't it? That kind of monster of the week versus kind of the character arc.
Yeah. I think. But what I would say is that I think Supernatural, especially in its early seasons, is genuinely about as horrific as Hill House.
Okay.
And that's the closest that I've come to this in terms of just scares.
Right. Oh, okay. Maybe I should check out Supernatural then. Yeah. Although 14 seasons is intimidating.
Seasons 2 to about 5, I would say, are genuinely great.
Okay. Yeah.
And after that, it's a little up and down, but there are superb episodes. There's an episode called The French Mistake, which is one of the funniest pieces of TV I've ever seen in my life.
Amazing. Yeah, because I've generally kind of been quite down on TV horror for the bulk of it until this. I kind of feel like it, apart from these brilliant kind of anthology style shows like Black Mirror and Twilight Zone and whatever else we get like that, these others, The Walking Dead even, I've completely lost all interest in.
The Walking Dead is an interesting comparison, isn't it, because it's such a grind, because there is no escape there's no relief there. And there certainly aren't any comedy episodes.
No, and you feel like there's no end point. You feel like there's no plan or destination. That's what I really struggle with The Walking Dead as well. It just kind of drifts along,
being awful and with people dying. And that's I guess that's the problem with it. And I think that's why the anthology shows have generally been more successful, because then you have one great concept, you do that one great concept, you never have to explain it, expand it, or develop it, and you move on to the next.
Yes. And I wonder if also there's a pacing thing as well about it, like a kind of, can you sustain fear and horror for 10 hours on a weekly basis or whatever it might be as well? It doesn't quite work in that way, horror, I don't think.
No, and I think that's what Mike Flanagan, who I admired already. I mean, Oculus, I thought was just a phenomenal film, and probably the closest, actually, in some ways, of his other films to this.
Yes.
I think he's phenomenally good at that, and I think what it comes down to again is spending time with the characters and spending time out of the house. And I think, I was reading some criticisms of the show before I came here just to kind of balance out my own enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And there's been a little bit of criticism of that. We're not in Hill House for a lot of it. We're in this, why are they hopping around the time zones? Her story is so elegant and so beautifully constructed. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean it works. No. For TV or even for the big screen, really.
No, exactly. I think what was so brilliant about it is that it isn't just an adaptation of the book stretched to 10 hours. He's just, really, other than the fact that it's set in this Hill House and there are some character names that are the same, it's basically a totally new, different text, isn't it? That's what's brilliant.
Yeah, he's lifted, lines here and there, moments here and there. There's enough sort of in its DNA.
Yes.
But it's not a straight adaptation, but. And one of the criticisms was this is disrespectful to Shirley Jackson, that it is, they would never do this to a male author. Well, they've done it to lots of male authors for a start, so that's not really fair. And also, I mean, I kind of feel like she's the kind of author who, and I haven't read all of her stuff in enough detail maybe to say this, but she doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would mind adaptation somehow.
No, absolutely, yeah. And I think, and funnily enough, we're going to talk about this next week with Suspiria, and I think if you're going to remake something or readapt it, make it vastly different, otherwise what's the point?
What is the point?
Yeah.
I think that is true, and I think actually if you think about it, some of the most successful adaptations, not just of horror but of anything, are the ones that take liberties. I mean, Stephen King doesn't like The Shining.
Yes.
He's wrong.
He's so wrong.
but The Shining, is a great book, and it's also a great movie despite the changes between the two, and I think that's the dream scenario.
There is a real, actually, if I didn't know that this was a Shirley Jackson novel, I would have guessed Stephen King about the Haunting of Hill House in this weird way. And I know that obviously Mike Flanagan has worked, he's done Gerald's Game obviously, but it feels like there's a real Stephen Kingness to the characters, the format. I don't know.
Well, he's our generation a little bit, isn't he? So he would have grown up on Stephen King. There's the connection just between children and then coming back to face the same thing as adults. You've got obviously a character called Steve. You've got the fact that Stephen King himself is a huge who is a writer. You've got the fact that Stephen King himself is a huge Shirley Jackson fan, so he loves the show. But I do think you're right. I think there's deliberate King texture in there, and actually I think that's because, and I don't have many examples of this to back myself up, because Stephen King on TV hasn't been done that brilliantly.
No.
But Stephen King should be brilliant on TV, because one of the reasons his books are so good is the texture. He is unbelievable at creating characters and towns and a landscape that these characters belong in.
Building
and
worlds.
A sense of place. Exactly that. And that's what gives this so much to work with. So I think that kind of texture and that kind of granular detail in the character building is really Kingian, if that makes sense.
I think so. I've got a real Stephen King, especially at the end, actually, we'll get to that, but I got a real feeling of Stephen King. Yeah, definitely. What do you think of these kind of cast members then? Because actually Boyd was mentioned when we discussed this initially that, that Mike Flanagan was talking to him about how the adult actors kind of worked with the child actors, so they kind of cast the adults first, then they cast the children, but then they kind of spent a bit of time, a couple of weeks in a sort of boot camp, whereby the adults studied the children and their behaviour and then sort of picked up their sort of nuances and did it that way round, sort of thing, so that the adults could behave like the children to sort of build that connection rather than vice versa, which is really interesting.
Yeah, probably easier for the adults to learn that than the kids to necessarily.
So it really makes sense. Do you think the cast did a good job in general? Yeah,
I think the cast were phenomenal. Generally, I really like McKenna Grace from Gifted last year. If you saw Gifted with Chris Evans, she's she's clearly an incredibly smart kid. It took me about 3 episodes to recognise her.
Is she the young Theo?
She's Theo, right? Like young Theo. But she's just generally great, and I actually wanted more almost for her to do, because I feel like Lulu Wilson as young Shirley and Violet McGraw as young Nell actually almost had bigger roles than she did.
Yes.
Little Nell and little Luke, especially Julian Hilliard, his little glasses.
He was a highlight.
My goodness.
Yeah, he was a highlight.
He was just the most charming kid.
Amazing.
Absolutely, brilliant all round. Paxton Singleton as young Steve almost had nothing to do by comparison.
Yes.
But he was just the good big brother character.
Yes.
And it was kind of interesting that he, I think, is a pretty uncomplicated good big brother. And older Steve has maybe lost some of that a little bit.
Oh my God, he's the kind of the character I kind of increasingly disliked as the series went on in a weird way.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people who hated Steve. I mean, personally, he was played by Mikael Huzman, so I was kind of there for him.
I know, who is, he's a ridiculously charming.
He's a very handsome man. But I think it was interesting. I don't think the show really condemns him, and I don't think it should condemn him.
No,
because I think he is. He's just clueless, and I think he becomes clued up a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's not malicious, he's not mean.
No, exactly. And that's what's brilliant about this. They were all kind of interestingly flawed characters in their own way, weren't they? Which was so good. So what do you think of, so I just want to run through kind of briefly the sort of structure of the series, because we get these kind of first 5 episodes then that kind of, it feels like it's like one episode, kind of reminded me of something like Lost even, or something like that, the way that we kind of get a flashback to each character kind of giving us their backstory. And each episode in that sort of first 5, it kind of in the present day, it kind of all leads to the same point essentially, which is Nell's death, I guess, isn't it? What did you think of those sort of first few episodes? Because it's before any kind of present day drama or horror happens. It's purely kind of character backstory, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And it's interesting the way that they layer the revelations about the house and what happened within that. Because I just rewatched episode 1 today, which is sort of Steve's episode. It also goes in age order.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Through those 5. And it's interesting how much of other people's setup you get in that story, not just his. Just enough to give you an idea of everybody and kind of pull you through that way.
Definitely. And there's this really interesting, I love what they do as well. And again, I've read some criticisms about this, about how we see the same things again and again. Like, it's literally scenes and shots get repeated, but you kind of see them from different perspectives. I love that. I love that kind of thing.
I forgot how much we see of the bent neck lady in episode 1.
Right, yeah.
Actually, by the time I got to episode 5, I'd kind of forgotten a lot of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's quite present actually from the beginning.
She is, and very creepy.
Very creepy.
Very creepy. Are you a fan? Because last time we chatted about sort of slasher movies and that kind of thing, but are you a fan of these kind of, I suppose, more classic ghost story type horror, these types of things?
I almost find these harder to cope with. Just the slow build is something I have a little bit of trouble with.
Yes.
And I thought the pacing of this was really good because there is at least one per episode where you're completely petrified.
Yes.
But also there are moments where you can relax enough that you can bear it, frankly. I mean, especially given this was all released as one lot and you can binge it, and I pretty much did.
Yeah, me too.
It would be too much, I think, if there wasn't any let up in that tension.
I think that's what makes this so brilliant as well. I think the problem with things like American Horror Story maybe is that they try and throw the horror at you constantly, and I think this feels like primarily Mike Flanagan's making a character drama with kind of horror peppered throughout rather than vice versa. Do you know what I mean? I think that was the right way to approach it in a way, wasn't it? And you do get obviously these terrifying scares, but it's not constant and exhausting.
Exactly. And there are funny bits as well. Yes. It's not completely lacking in humour, which is important.
And incredibly sad bits as well. Which I guess is what the best ghost stories have. Mm-hmm. You know, movies like The Orphanage and these kind of really emotional movies that deal with death and grief, I suppose.
The Others. Yeah, absolutely.
The Others, exactly. The Sixth Sense. All those types of, all of the best ghost movies out there they have this kind of melancholy sort of feel to them, don't they? Which this does. Any highlights for you in those sort of first half, in terms of these sort of characters and the character backstories that we get?
I mean, quite a lot. I mean, I think young Theo realizing what her abilities are fantastic. And also, I think it was in the same episode, the writing on the wall and sort of peeling off the wallpaper and finding the thing behind it. That was creepy. I think obviously the bent neck lady, episode 5 is a stunning piece of TV. I kind of think actually that the series sort of peaks in the middle. I think 5 and 6.
I think 5 and 6 is where it is absolute, like a masterpiece. You know, it's so clever. I loved, I think it was episode 4, Luke's episode about sort of the drug addiction, and that was a really incredible, again, not even in a horror way, I suppose, but just as a piece of TV drama, it was just phenomenal. I thought. There's
a lot of films about drug addiction coming out at the moment, but I've seen Beautiful Boy, which is another, speaking of Oscar contenders as we were before. This one feels like that same the kind of banal horror of addiction and the absolute kind of isolation that it brings, and the isolation it has to bring because of the damage that you will do otherwise to those around you. I thought that was really well dealt with. And then the fact that even if he's okay, even to the extent that he is holding it together, no one can trust that he is easily,
Exactly. So it's heartbreaking.
It's really heartbreaking,
Did you ever watch, when you were watching this, were you ever thinking that this might turn out to not be about ghosts at all? As in, there are some movies where it might all turn out, because we've got this link between, are these people haunted, or are they, one may be suffering from depression, one is an addict, one is in some way suffering from trauma, and it obviously feeds you all of that. I mean, were you ever sort of thinking, that might be the way it goes?
I wasn't, and maybe I should have been, and that has been a criticism of the show, that Jackson leaves it open to the interpretation. There are very, very few moments in the book that could not be the product of one person's crazy mind.
Yes.
I don't mean to use crazy pejoratively. I probably shouldn't say that, but that is unusual. And I think in this one, I didn't really doubt that there were some ghosts.
Yeah.
So I kind of was pretty sure.
Yeah, me too. I think it gives you both deliberately, doesn't it? And saying that one kind of could work as a metaphor for the other. And I also read, again, I don't know whether this is genuine, but I read an article about how the 5 characters and those 5 episodes represent the 5 stages of grief, which is really interesting.
It is. I think this is an interesting one because I think Mike Flanagan's actually confirmed this.
Oh, great! Yeah,
that this is sort of intentional. So you've got Steve as denial, Shirley as anger, Theo bargaining, Luke depression, and Nell acceptance.
Yeah, which that totally works.
It does. I mean, I think Theo's the weakest for me. I don't get the bargaining aspect very much. I think it's more. There's the whole bargaining with the universe she wants to feel again, if you remember that sort of story she has.
Yes.
I mean, definitely denial and anger, those are 100% really, really strong in their characters.
Yes.
Depression's interesting because that's, of course, the hardest stage of grief to get through. It's the most long-lasting. It's the most sort of tenacious, I guess. And obviously Luke's had maybe the hardest struggle.
Yes, although actually I would have always said that about Nell as well. It felt very much like she was suffering with depression. Very much so, in her story. Yeah.
But then I guess, we see her in this first episode go back to the house. So maybe that's the acceptance.
Absolutely
and maybe that's what comes back at the end.
Yes.
So it's through accepting.
Yeah.
To some degree and to some extent that she gets the kind of the power that she does towards the end.
Yes, exactly. Well, there's this kind of, and again, I suppose we don't really ever find out for definite does she go back to that house to kill herself, or is it just more that there's some reason why the house is drawing her there, but there's this kind of resignation or acceptance or peace in her when she sort of turns up at the car and at the house at the beginning, doesn't she?
Yeah, and when we in that first episode we don't really see quite what's brought her there, and I think almost even when we go back and we see it from her point of view, it's still not clear what's brought her there, what she was looking for. She clearly felt she had to go for some kind of closure. But then it's obviously, that the house kind of betrays her, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Which that is kind of the big link to the original book and the original movie. I remember that being a big Nell sort of being very much drawn to the house and felt like she belonged there. But then ultimately, I think being sort of betrayed by the house because the house is evil, essentially. Which is essentially is what's kept in this as well. So we get those incredible sort of 5 backstory episodes, and then we get to episode 6, which I feel like everyone has been talking about. This kind of episode 6. In the way that it's kind of, it brings everyone together for the first time, doesn't it? In what feels like, is it a single take, or at least it's very few takes?
It's very few. I think it's so. I read the Mike Flanagan interview about this. So it's about 5 takes in total, but each of them is pretty much 10 minutes. I think the longest one is 17 or 18 minutes.
It's incredible. So it's like rope. I love it.
Yeah, it's stunning.
It's incredible, and I may be kind of appreciated it at the time of watching it, and that was partly because I was just really into the drama. But also I just assumed that, okay, I really like the way it looks like it's one take, but I'm sure this isn't. At moments where, for instance, they would walk out of the funeral home and then suddenly they'd be in Hill House. But I've since watched the featurette, and that is genuinely, they built the sets so that they connected to each other, and they really did film it in kind of real time in that way, which is amazing, because actually they probably didn't need to have done that, but they did, and it's incredible.
Apparently this was in his original pitch for the series. I think it's stunning, and I think it, like, again, similarly, it took me about 8 or 10 minutes to notice that it was that they hadn't cut at any point.
I sat down to write the script for 106 and realized that a lot of the camera choreography needed to be incorporated into the draft itself, because we were doing 18-page scenes without any cuts. I wanted an episode that would appear to take place essentially in real time in one single shot. Piece of cake. It turned into a challenge unlike anything else I've ever had in production. The set had to actually be constructed with this episode in mind. We knew that we had certain shots that were going to require us to walk through the house in its entirety.
It's beautifully choreographed. It's a phenomenal piece of directing and just work from all the crew and the cast. But it also does keep you really in that room with them, and really in the moment with them. And then even when certain characters obviously go to the house, it keeps you in that memory as a specific experience.
And it kind of the way that I think the episode is called Two Storms, and it's obviously this sort of dark and stormy night in both timelines, and it sustains that kind of. It kind of does feel the most sort of gothic-y, doesn't it, of all 10 episodes? Well,
I mean, if you're in a funeral home and a gothic mansion and you can't feel gothic, that would be a problem.
It's so true. And it is. I think it's. I think it's worthy of all the hype that episode is getting, because it kind of nails everything that is brilliant about the series. I think the kind of character relationships, that kind of creepy tone, the sort of depth and technical skill and performances. It's got everything. There's kind of psychological aspects as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just little things like the dad turning around and seeing them all as kids.
Yes.
And then sort of turning back, and of course they're not kids anymore.
Yeah. And there are that episode in particular, and I know this happens all throughout the series, but that episode in particular, where I would see a lot of ghosts of Nell or whoever stood in the background of shots. Yeah. And I know that, again, this is something everyone's been talking about the series brilliantly. It's that it's got these creepy scares rather than jump scares. It's got kind of, you'll suddenly notice somebody stood in the background after 5 or 10 minutes of looking at something, which is brilliant. I mean, did you sort of get that whilst watching it?
I didn't get it for the first couple of episodes, but then there's some bit where somebody's coming down the stairs, and I can't remember which episode it is, I'm afraid. But you can just see these silhouettes through so somebody's halfway up the stairs and they're talking to somebody else on the stairs, and behind them downstairs there's a door open and there's nobody's moving, but there's these two very human looking shapes. Yes. Now maybe they're the human sized statues that are everywhere in this freaking house.
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Yeah.
But they look like they're looking right at you. It's
brilliant.
Creepy.
It is brilliant. And I've seen, again, lots of articles since where it's like, these are all the ghosts that you missed throughout the haunting of it. And there are absolutely loads. There are several per episode, just sort of littered in the background. And I know that sort of comes into play a bit more later on in the programme, where they'll talk about a kind of handyman working on the house, and somebody's like, no, that's a ghost or whatever. It's brilliant.
It was the clock cleaner, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah. I love all that about it. And actually, I think one of the scariest moments for me in the whole series is, I think it's in episode 4, in Luke's episode, where he is hiding under the bed with the bowler hat, and that man comes in to come and get it, and sort of floats down the corridor and floats into the room. It's just brilliant, and it's like, it takes its time. Yeah. Oh, it's just wonderful.
That reminded me actually of the Buffy episode Hush.
The Gentleman, right?
Gentleman, yeah.
Very much like The Gentleman, yeah. Which, will always be creepy. That's
always
the thing. Because that's what's brilliant about it. Sometimes the scares are sometimes the ghosts are kind of very subtle and shadowy and in the background, and sometimes it will just be in your face. Oh, there's a man floating down a corridor. Yeah. Here he is, and it's quite matter of fact about it as well. Yeah. It's got a bit of everything, and again, I guess I think Boyd was saying, Mike Flanagan mentioned that. Because it was a series, he was able to take his time in that way that you never would be able to in a lot of modern movies, and again draw on movies like The Shining, where he could take his time and sustain a shot for a very long time before something happened or before somebody appeared or whatever.
He kept doing that. He would, somebody would in the very first episode again. So there's a moment where Hugh, the father, Henry Thomas, walks out of shot, and the camera just stays there on the corridor.
Yeah.
So I was instantly terrified. Nothing happened, and then they had a nasty jump cut to him getting back into bed. But it's terrifying to just leave the camera on this empty corridor.
It really is. And actually I liked, again, that we briefly mentioned this already, but I liked that it was quite sparing with its big boo jump scares, mainly. But one of the ones that really got me is, I think it's in maybe episode 9 or maybe 10 even, when the two sisters are driving to the house and they're arguing, and you're so involved in this kind of high sort of, high emotion character moment. And then this ghost just appears, shouts in the middle of the car crash. Is absolutely terrifying.
Nell interrupts them because she needs them to focus.
Oh my God.
Terrifying.
Really good.
I think the other one that's the classic sort of just horror moment is poor little Luke in the basement.
Oh my God! Yeah, the dumb waiter.
The dumb waiter. It's a classic. Like all those beats have been done before, but they were done superbly.
Yes.
In that scene.
Yes.
Brilliantly.
Exactly. It's just that's the thing. It's not necessarily giving us any new tropes, but it pulls everything off so well. It's just such a brilliant sort of classic piece of horror.
One of the other things I thought was really well done was another Luke thing, which is him talking about his little friend Abigail. Because I was like, well, I'm clued up. Abigail,
classic.
Totally a ghost.
Yeah.
Imaginary friend is definitely a ghost.
Yeah.
And they've actually double bluffed you. Abigail is real and they killed her.
And actually, yeah, a crucial plot point as well, wasn't she, in the end? Yeah, I love that. You're so right, because how many millions of times have we seen, a kid who probably can see ghosts that the parents can't, and there'll always be a moment when they'll draw a picture of the family and they'll be like, oh, who's that extra person you're holding hands with in this picture you've drawn?
Exactly.
Every single time. And it was brilliant that, yeah, she was just the poor daughter of the neighbours, the sort of housekeepers.
The Dudleys,
yeah. The Dudleys. The Dudleys are an interesting family as well. I kind of wish, actually, that we'd gotten a little bit more of them.
Yeah,
it felt a little bit kind of skimmed over in a way.
One of my criticisms would be that they left that piece of vital exposition about their family background too late in the series. That was what, episode 9 or 10?
Yes.
And we needed to know that earlier. And not because I don't think it would have given away that Abigail was real, but I think they needed to build that in a little bit sooner because it felt very crowbarred at the last minute.
A little bit. I think if I've got any complaints, they will mainly come in that sort of last 2 or 3 episodes of the series, and maybe it was just such a brilliant build up, and then it kind of was like, right, now we need to wrap up plot quite a bit, and then it kind of, like you say, the pacing sort of significantly feels like it changes in those last couple of episodes.
I think the pacing's a little bit off for that bit, and I think the other thing that was a little bit underserved was Liv, Carla Gugino's character, because she goes. She turns a little bit suddenly.
She does, yeah, because she's such a fascinating character, and she's obviously she is really the mystery of the story in a way. We're kind of, why has she? What happened that night?
What happened that night? What happened to her?
Yeah,
and why is the father wigged out?
Yes, that's really the central sort of mystery, the arc, isn't it, that we're sort of waiting to discover that it's told across these 10 episodes. And yes, again, a little bit kind of rushed explanation at the very end. I did really love, I can't remember which episode it was, I think it might have been 9 again, the kind of the one that did give you a bit more of her backstory and what she was seeing, and the moment when she kind of smashes the mirror that her son makes her, and again these kind of really interesting emotional moments of what she's going through. But yeah, maybe it was a little bit late on or something to get some of those.
Yeah, I can get leaving her till the end, because I think that worked really well. It's like, okay, we know everybody else now, we know everything else.
Yes.
Now tell us about her. But then her story just didn't have quite the impact that I wanted, because I think it just went from unconcerned about ghosts and very concerned about her family to completely wrapped up in the ghosts and believing everything they said, and there was no real in between of being really wigged out herself, maybe. I don't know.
Yes, you're right. And I found her and the husband who who's he playing?
Henry Thomas.
Yes. Her and the husband, I found really interesting characters, and I kind of wanted a little bit more of them all the way throughout in a way. But they were these kind of big question mark characters, I suppose, which was sort of the point of it. How do you feel in general then? I mean, we've just touched upon this, but do you episode 10, I feel like, has got the most amount of criticism out of everything. Most of the criticism comes with that episode. What are your thoughts on episode 10?
I was just reading an interview again with Flanagan, and he said that originally in that sort of little epilogue scene with everybody 2 years later, and Luke is clean, and Steve's back with his wife, and she's pregnant, and all is right in the world, that they were going to have the shape of the room be the red room.
Yes.
And they were going to have that window shape in the background.
Right.
And the implication being that they didn't actually escape at all.
They're still in there.
And then he woke up in the middle of the night and he thought, that's just too too dark. It's too bleak. I can't do it. And so we get the sort of, very happy ending. And I do get it. I get the criticism, and I intellectually I even agree with it maybe, and emotionally I am completely fine with the way that the thing is. Because I felt like I needed them to escape. I was too invested in them maybe. So I think it's, I kind of see the criticism. I do think there's an interesting idea there that maybe by accepting your fate, as Nell does and as Hugh does, that you can retain some kind of power over the house. And that by doing it the way that they do it, and even to an extent the way Liv maybe does it, and she, I don't know, she goes into it for the right reasons. Perhaps she is twisted, but she's twisted by love, and she's twisted by concern, perhaps. That that maybe you retain something more of yourself, and that there's something there that can be reasoned with or bargained with that wouldn't be true of the house as a whole.
Yes.
So maybe there's a kind of an excuse, if you like.
Yeah.
But
and again, it gives you all of those elements of what you get with sort of ghost stories and stories dealing with loss and grief. There's this kind of sadness to it, but there's also this kind of hopefulness that your loved ones are still there, lingering on. And again, which is something that you know, obviously that, you know, the interesting thing about sort of ghost stories and those kind of things is that yes, they're scary, but also on the other hand, they give you that idea that there is something after death. So there is something also kind of weirdly optimistic about them sometimes, you know?
Exactly.
As opposed to some of the sort of more nihilistic sort of horror that you might get elsewhere. So that, and I think again that there is a bit of that in the final episode, isn't there? Is there the moment, I've only seen it the once, but there's that moment when the Dudleys kind of bring the child into the house so that they can see her again or see them again, you know, and but it did push the schmaltz and sentimentality a little bit for me. And again, it kind of, that another thing that reminded me a bit Stephen King like, I thought. Sometimes he kind of a little bit too neat an ending in some ways, I think, for me at least.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, like I said, I think that's probably all completely true, and I don't want to know.
Yeah, no, I
completely kind of agree. I do think that the Dudley thing was interesting, isn't it? Because they literally sort of say, we'll cover it up, you know.
That's right.
Let us bury her in the back garden, like nobody else knows that she exists, even.
Yes.
So you don't have to sort of face any consequences. There'll be no questions about this. Just let us keep coming to the house so we can keep her.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
Which, again, you know, that's something that you kind of want their story to be more developed there and see more of that, because there is the moment of him bringing her back into the house as an old lady to die.
Yes.
But again, you know, maybe we needed another moment with her and her daughter or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe it was just, but it was so weird because there are moments of it where I kind of thought I wanted a little bit more, but there was also an element of me in episode 10 that was like, I'm getting too much. I actually could have done with a little bit more ambiguity in a way, like it had a lot of endings or something. I don't know. But, you know, again, what I don't like is when people judge something on the ending, because I'm always like, but what about that first 9 hours that you loved so much? You can't suddenly decide that you hate the program because you didn't like episode 10. That's the thing. I've always had that argument about Lost, because I know so many, and I know Lost is very flawed, but a lot of people will really be down on it because of the way it ended. I'm like, but something kept you going week after week for 6 years. Yeah, you must have still enjoyed it to a point, you know, even if you didn't like the final episode. You know?
I bailed early on Lost because
and that's fair enough.
Because I was worried about that.
Yeah.
So I read an article where basically the writers were saying, we're making it up as we go, and we'll go back, we'll write scenes and we'll insert them into earlier episodes to make it look like we planned stuff. And I thought to myself, if that's what they're doing, I'm not in for another X-Files where they go and they go and they go and they don't have an end point.
No, so. Exactly. That's the thing. And, you know, I get leaving the program because you're not getting anything out of it, but when people are so into it and then stick with it all the way through and then go, oh well, that was shit, I sort of like, no, you must have there must have been something you liked about it. It's about the journey, not the destination.
The journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing to note is that there are rumors, aren't there, of a season 2?
I know, right? I was just about to ask you this.
So if we have a happy ending right now, it may be very provisional.
Yes.
And so maybe we need to remember that as well, that this happy ending may be more of a, you know, pause.
Yes.
A stop.
How do you feel about that? The idea that this could continue? Because again, it felt like such an ending, but...
Yeah, it did. But it might continue with completely different people. I mean, what actually could happen is that season 2 is more... closer to the book, it's investigators going into this house.
Yes.
That's possible.
Yes.
It may be a completely different family or something else.
It's very true.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I want to put these people through anymore.
No, I feel like their characters' arcs have come to an end, haven't they? And I guess there's I'm going to terribly paraphrase it here, but there is the line in the book where it's something like, you know, people come and go, but this house always stands there. It's always there or something. And I guess there's that idea that, you know, they could suddenly have a period second series set in the 1800s or something with a family there or something like that.
It could be the sort of the prequel of the family that built the house, which of course in the book was the Crane family.
Yes.
So they've stolen the name, so they'll have to get a new name.
Yes, exactly.
The Hill family, I think there's a line about it in the show.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Which makes sense. So maybe they'll go back and do the Hills and explain how the house became so messed up in the beginning, and why he would put all those creepy statues everywhere.
I loved it. The production design actually is incredible, isn't it? It's gorgeous, yeah. So overall, I mean, favorite episode. Do you have a favorite episode?
I mean, yeah, it's just. Do you know what? I'm going to say the bent neck lady because episode 5, because that was the moment where I started texting everybody.
Yes.
Going, oh my God, you need to watch this. I'm not kidding. You need to stop whatever you're doing and watch this right now.
I know.
Episode 6 obviously was technically a marvel and dramatically a masterpiece. But I think it wouldn't have worked without episode 5 before it.
Yeah, right. I know. It's amazing. It is. Exactly the same thing. I was kind of episode 1 and 2 going, yeah, this is good. This is good. Episode
I like
3
this.
And then 4, I was going, this is really good. And then by 5 and 6, I was going, oh my God, everybody needs to watch this. And also, who else has seen it so I can talk about it with somebody
exactly.
as well. It's just phenomenal. Yeah, so good. Favourite character or performance? Do you have a favourite?
I mean, Baby Luke, maybe.
Yes, Baby Luke.
Baby
so
Luke
good.
For those glasses. Oh my God, they're phenomenal. I really loved them all. I was invested in them all.
I really thought adult Theo, Kate Siegel, was brilliant.
Yeah.
I really and I like everything that kind of her character as an adult sort of went through. There's all that kind of stuff that goes on between her and Shirley in the second half, where she may or may not have kissed the husband and all of that kind of thing as well happening. I think that's in episode 6 as well, isn't it? And that kind of high tension moment when they all come together. I liked all of that. I liked having all these kind of family dramas kind of weaving throughout and all of their kind of weird sort of messed up relationships that all of these siblings have in different ways.
And I like the way it used her power. I think that could actually be a way forward for season 2 if there is one, of, you know, developing that a little bit more. That scene where she goes to visit the foster girls' home, that was... my God. That was devastating.
Incredible. The way that was done was so subtle and brilliant as well. It didn't need to... I loved as well about that you never had that moment where she would touch something and you'd get a big flash of images or see what she's seeing. Yeah. You never got that. You just saw her reaction to things.
Exactly. And yet, you know, you kind of felt like you knew what she was seeing, which is a testament to both Siegel and Grace, I think. Phenomenal acting from both.
Just so brilliant. There's that moment when she touches Nell's body and then just kind of breaks down. And again, you're thinking, how bad is this, you know, what did she see? You know, I loved all that about it. It was very subtle, wasn't it? It was wonderful. Amazing. So all round then, big thumbs up for Haunting of Hill House. Yeah,
I mean, like I say, intellectually I will agree with many criticisms that many people have made, and in my heart I do not care. I loved it.
And that's the best possible compliment I think you can give, because if you're, you know, I think ultimately this program makes you feel something more than you know, want to, and it's like what we said about this episode 6, is that, you know, you're not necessarily going, oh, look how technically brilliant this is, because you're so involved in the character drama, and then it's only afterwards when you go, oh, holy shit, you know, that
was really, really impressive.
It was the problem I had with movies like Birdman, actually, was that I found myself watching too long, just going, oh yeah, I see what they're doing there. Oh yeah, there's a drummer in the background. Oh yeah, very clever. You know, like, as opposed to sort of care about what's going on, I suppose. No, this didn't ever feel a coldly technical exercise. It always felt like you were rooted in the people, and I think that's a good thing. Yes, amazing. Helen, thank you so much.
Pleasure, thank you
for joining me. If people want to sort of find you on social media, chat to you, anything like that, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm Helen L. O'Hara, and I'm on the Empire podcast most weeks, at least if I'm in the country. So find us at empireonline.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
And there we have it. Thank you so much for listening, and a big thank you to my guest, the brilliant Helen O'Hara. Don't forget, if you want to hear more from Helen, then please do subscribe to the Empire Movie Podcast. That's where you can hear Helen and Chris Hewitt and the other folks at Empire discuss movies on a weekly basis. So, what do you think of The Haunting of Hill House? Are you a staunch defender of the ending? Do you think the whole show in general is a little bit overrated? Get in touch. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Letterboxd at EvolutionPod, and on Facebook. That's facebook.com/evolutionofhorror. And there is also a discussion group. That's the Evolution of Horror discussion group, and that can be found on Facebook. That's it for now. Join us again very soon for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.